What I'm going to be talking today about is hot topics, on things that are topical, things that we're interested in now. And what conversation about InfoSec and privacy today would be complete without talking about Google and the GDPR. Sounds a bit like a David and Goliath theme tune. However, if anyone hasn't heard about what's going on, Google has just been fined by the French equivalent of the Information Commissioner 50 million euros. And that 50 million euros was based on the fact that they were not obtaining appropriate consent and they were not giving people the appropriate levels of control over how Google processed their data. Let's back up a step a little bit and think about what Google do with your data. I don't think anyone, unless they're under a stone, doesn't understand what Google is doing with data. They are absorbing our data and turning that into a profit. That is not a surprise. We all know that. I think it's also important to note that the GDPR is not trying to make that an illegal process. It's trying to give data subjects control and a little more visibility and transparency into how that works. So in come this set of lawsuits, or this one particular, it's not really a lawsuit, it's a complaint, and it's been upheld and a fine has occurred about Google. And the grounds being that consent is not obtained appropriately and that there's not a fine-tuned enough control over users' use of that, of Google's use of that data. And I think if we unpick that a little bit, I think it's important to note. I don't know if many of you looked, but early last year in 2018, before the GDPR, and in fact late the year before that, I received, like many of you did, that notification from Google saying we're changing our practices around GDPR. We're going to be more compliant. We're going to do the right thing. And I went into that site, and it was actually pretty good. They'd gotten rid of a lot of the on-off controls. They're a giant. They knew they couldn't allow that, or it wouldn't be allowed. And they did give some fairly significant effort and put some effort into allowing us actual control. You can turn off those ads. You can turn off some of the processing of information and still maintain some use of their services. So they seem to be doing all the right things. At the very least, they looked at the GDPR legislation as a tick list, and they had a tick in each of those boxes. But what we're looking at here was a set of lawsuits that were just waiting for GDPR. Again, I use the word lawsuits inappropriately. A set of complaints. We're just waiting for GDPR to come into force, because the preconceived notion is in my opinion, is they wanted to take Google down. They wanted to bloody the nose of this giant, however it worked, because they didn't like the way that they were using data. And I think these are two things that really should be split apart. Is Google doing the right job, do a perfect job? Probably not. I don't think there is a perfect job. In fact, GDPR was specifically built to give you a set of guiding principles on the way you process data. So there can be no perfect votes. We've had for the past 2 years the Club CISO live votes. However, one of the topics that came up quite a few times was cyber insurance. I remember 2 years ago it was talked about, and lots of people in the room were just scoffing, including some of those who were insurers. And last year, it was deemed as, actually, a lot of people are doing it, but there was still quite a bit of scoffing because there was a level of immaturity assessed in both the insurers, and that they didn't necessarily know how to write a policy, or that there was a huge variance. Some insurers were quite mature and understood what they were doing, and some maybe were just writing a piece of paper. And of course, in those who were consuming the insurance, there was quite a difference in maturity as well. Some people just signing a piece of paper and a board thinking, there, I'm safe. And others thinking about it more seriously as one of a raft of controls they're using to mitigate that risk. However, this past, recently, we've seen some evidence that suggests that this market is going to change, or is going through some changes now. Two cases, both of them were actually not that young, but they're coming in the news now. So I don't know if you've seen it, but Mondelez, the owner of Cadbury, and I can't remember the other company they owned, but they were hit by NotPetya pretty badly, to the tune of multi-millions. And they thought they were covered for cyber insurance through Zurich. I'm going to mention these because these names are mentioned in the press, so it's not something I'm telling you that's strange or privileged. And Zurich has decided, after initially saying, hey, here, have 10 million pounds, which is a fraction of what they thought they were due, they revoked it all and said, actually, no, NotPetya was an act of war. Let's think about that for a second. An insurer to suggest that it is an act of war suggests the insurer either knows more than we do about how to attribute attacks, which is highly doubtful, or are hoping that this whole thing is going to be able to go away in the noise of lawyers making their money. And I think that is, something insurers have done since insurance began as an industry, but B, is they're able to jump on in this area because of the complexity and the uncertainty that's involved here. But what is that really doing? That actually is reducing the value of cyber insurance. Those same boards who may be thinking, that's how I'm going to control, that's how I'll mitigate that, that's how I'll protect myself. Actually, that's going to be completely different. Will this create a whole new type of cyber insurance, for instance, a cyber attack, wherever it comes from? I mean, acts of God, for instance, can be written or can be ignored in many insurance policies. However, you can also insure yourself against them as well. Flood insurance, etc. These are acts of God. So it's quite possible that we're going to see a seismic shift in the way that cyber insurance is both written and consumed. Now, we're really interested to hear what you've got to say on this subject. We're really interested to have you join a discussion. So if we could have you join us on Twitter, follow us at Club CISO. You could direct message us. You could go to clubciso.org, or you could go to the LinkedIn forum and talk to us. We'd really like to hear what you've got to say about cyber insurance in general, or if you have a specific case where you're running into something, I'd love to hear more about that and start that conversation. Now, before I talk about things that are really interesting to me, I'm just going to look around the room and see if I have any questions that you might want me to answer.
Okay, just someone online is wondering whether you're live or not. You look so well polished.
Oh, that's really quite sweet. Yes, I'm live. And what's really interesting to me is that this whole office behind me has become very mouse quiet.
I just think it'd be important, you've already said how people can get hold of you, whether there's a particular way to get hold of you personally as well, if it's easier to do that.
Yes, you can DM me, you can direct message me on Twitter at Marc Lueck, and Marc is with a C, and Lueck is with luck with an E in the middle, and hopefully everybody got that little puzzle. Or straight through the Club CISO one as well. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn, but if you do, please make an introductory message and ask me what you want to talk about, because otherwise I'll probably ignore you. But any other ways as well, you can reach out to any of the support team as well. But have we done?
Yeah, I think we're wrapping up, mate.
So from a time perspective, I think everyone's shocked that I didn't speak for 20 minutes. But I can only hear so much of my own voice. I want to thank you, everybody here who is listening, and I hope you can tune in next week.
Next week?
Next week.
Next week.
Paul
Heffernan and I will be discussing DevSecOps, or SecOps for
DevSecOps from Revolut.
From Revolut, yes. CISO for Revolut, and we're going to be talking about DevSecOps, and I'm going to promise to be a little bit cynical, but actually I think it'll be a really great conversation. So please tune in next week, and I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.